Lee Van Cleef's professional killer speed had been tested by men whose lives depended on being faster than death itself, until Steve McQueen proved that some lessons can't be learned from consultants. They have to be survived in places where losing means more than just professional embarrassment. When Hollywood's most dangerous-looking actor challenged the King of Cool to prove his quick draw wasn't just camera tricks, what followed would demonstrate the difference between studying violence and living through it. One lightning-fast draw that would silence the desert forever. The tumbleweeds suddenly stopped moving, as if afraid to witness what was coming. If you want to witness the untold stories of Hollywood's deadliest confrontations, subscribe now. 1967 Nevada desert, 30 miles outside of Las Vegas, where the landscape stretched endlessly toward mountains that looked like broken teeth against azure sky. The location had been chosen for Western film productions because its harsh beauty provided authentic frontier atmosphere that studio backlots couldn't duplicate through artificial lighting and manufactured sets designed to look dangerous, without actually being dangerous to expensive actors whose safety was protected through insurance policies worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. This was neutral ground where different kinds of authenticity could be tested according to standards that had nothing to do with box office receipts, critical acclaim, or studio politics that determined whose careers prospered according to public relations campaigns rather than genuine capability, when that capability was measured by people who understood the difference between performing skills and possessing them through experience that couldn't be duplicated in classrooms or acting studios. The makeshift shooting range had been constructed using equipment that could be disassembled quickly when filming schedules required relocation to different desert locations that provided variety in background scenery while maintaining consistent lighting conditions that served cinematographic requirements for Western productions that demanded authentic rather than manufactured atmosphere to convince audiences they were witnessing genuine frontier experiences. Weathered target boards stood at regulation distances like tombstones marking the graves of previous assumptions about human limitation, while equipment tables held weapons that had been selected for their historical accuracy rather than dramatic effect, proving that some productions prioritized authenticity over visual appeal when that authenticity was necessary for creating believable portrayals of dangerous situations that audiences expected to look real rather than obviously choreographed. Lee Van Cleef, 42 years old, stood in the shade of a canvas shelter that provided minimal relief from Nevada heat that made extended outdoor activity dangerous for anyone who valued comfort over educational opportunity. His weathered face had been carved by years of playing characters who understood violence as personal expression rather than professional requirement. But his expertise extended beyond screen presence to include genuine knowledge of firearms and combat techniques that had been acquired through sources whose credibility was based on necessity rather than entertainment industry instruction. Fresh from establishing himself as Hollywood's most convincing villain through roles that had proven his understanding of dangerous characters exceeded surface-level impression management to reach authentic territory where genuine knowledge was required to maintain credibility with audiences who could distinguish between performed and lived experience, Van Cleef approached this informal competition with understanding that his reputation was based on more than just sinister screen presence. His background included military service, extensive firearms training with technical advisors whose expertise was based on combat rather than entertainment experience, and systematic study of historical gunfighter techniques that had been documented by people who'd witnessed actual rather than choreographed violence during periods when such knowledge was necessity rather than hobby for men whose survival depended on practical rather than theoretical understanding of lethal capabilities. Today he wore simple range clothing that reflected his understanding that authentic capability was demonstrated through performance rather than costume. That genuine expertise didn't require impressive display to prove its effectiveness when that effectiveness was tested by people who measured competence through results rather than appearance that might look convincing without being substantively accurate. Steve McQueen, 37 years old, approached the shooting range with equipment that suggested he'd prepared for this encounter with the same obsessive attention to detail that had characterized his automotive research for racing films, his motorcycle training for action sequences, and his systematic approach to every skill that his screen persona required him to demonstrate convincingly rather than just approximate through stunt doubles or special effects that might fool audiences without satisfying his personal requirements for authentic capability. His custom holster and carefully maintained Colt .45 reflected understanding that professional credibility was earned through genuine rather than manufactured preparation, with sources whose expertise represented authentic rather than entertainment industry understanding of what dangerous skills actually required from people who claimed to possess them for reasons that transcended dramatic presentation to reach practical application. Fresh from completing several Western roles that had established him as Hollywood's most credible action star through performances that convinced audiences his toughness was based on genuine rather than manufactured foundations, McQueen understood that his reputation would be meaningless if it couldn't survive testing by people whose knowledge was earned through circumstances that entertainment industry preparation couldn't adequately simulate. His pale blue eyes surveyed the desert environment with tactical awareness that suggested he was measuring everything according to lessons learned in places where being tough meant surviving conditions that formal training couldn't adequately prepare people to handle through theoretical knowledge that hadn't been tested by practical application under circumstances that eliminated protective variables. The confrontation developed naturally as both men discovered they possessed strong opinions about authenticity in Western entertainment and different approaches to acquiring knowledge that served genuine rather than performed demonstrations of dangerous skills that audiences expected from actors who claimed to represent authentic rather than mythological frontier capabilities. "Steve," Van Cleef called out from his position beneath the canvas shelter, his voice carrying authority that had been earned through years of proving his understanding of dangerous characters exceeded entertainment industry approximation to reach territory where genuine knowledge was required for maintaining credibility with sources whose approval couldn't be purchased through publicity campaigns or assumed through celebrity status. "Lee," McQueen replied, approaching with respect for legendary performer whose screen presence had established standards for villainous authenticity that other actors were expected to match through comparable dedication to understanding characters they portrayed rather than merely imitating surface characteristics that looked convincing without being substantively accurate according to standards that eliminated pretense in favor of practical capability. "Heard you've been working with firearms instructors to prepare for Western roles. Admirable dedication to authenticity, though I've noticed that Hollywood instruction tends to prioritize dramatic effect over practical effectiveness when those two requirements conflict with each other." The observation carried implications that McQueen understood immediately. Van Cleef was suggesting that entertainment industry training served different purposes than authentic preparation for circumstances where genuine, rather than performed capability determined outcomes that couldn't be corrected through better coaching or additional practice sessions conducted under controlled conditions. "What kind of instruction do you think serves practical effectiveness rather than just dramatic presentation?" McQueen asked, his tone carrying genuine interest in learning from someone whose knowledge had been proven through consistent screen performances that demonstrated superior understanding of what authentic dangerous characters actually looked like when portrayed by actors whose preparation exceeded surface-level approximation. "Instruction that comes from sources whose expertise was earned through circumstances where inadequate preparation meant consequences that couldn't be corrected through retakes or stunt coordination that eliminates genuine risk in favor of choreographed approximations that serve dramatic rather than practical purposes." Van Cleef moved away from the shelter with movements that revealed decades of systematic training that had shaped his understanding of what genuine capability looked like when it was developed through necessity rather than choice, proven through testing that eliminated protective variables that formal instruction provided through controlled environments that might not adequately prepare students for real applications. "Show me what your Hollywood preparation has taught you about authentic quick-draw techniques that serve practical rather than just dramatic purposes," quote, Van Cleef continued, his tone carrying challenge that mixed professional curiosity with competitive assessment of whether McQueen's claimed authenticity could survive examination by someone whose expertise represented standard against which all such claims would be measured. "What would you like to see demonstrated? Everything that matters when speed determines survival rather than just impressive performance. Draw time, accuracy under pressure, weapon handling that serves practical rather than choreographed purposes, and psychological preparation that maintains effectiveness when circumstances test whether training was based on genuine understanding or just superficial approximation of authentic techniques." The challenge was comprehensive and unambiguous, forcing McQueen to demonstrate whether his preparation was based on systematic learning that could survive testing by expert whose knowledge represented authentic rather than entertainment industry understanding of what dangerous capabilities actually required when they were measured according to practical rather than theoretical standards that eliminated ambiguity about genuine versus performed competence. Fair enough, though I should warn you that my training wasn't limited to Hollywood coaches who prioritize dramatic effect. I've worked with people whose expertise was earned through circumstances where mistakes had permanent rather than temporary consequences for students whose preparation was tested by situations that formal instruction couldn't adequately simulate. We'll see whether that preparation translates to practical demonstration that proves authentic rather than assumed capability when it's tested under conditions that eliminate protective variables, Van Cleef replied, understanding that claims about superior preparation were meaningless until they were verified through performance that could be measured according to objective rather than subjective standards. The first test involved basic draw speed measured against chronometer that eliminated subjective assessment in favor of precise timing, that would determine whether McQueen's claimed quick-draw capability was based on genuine rather than exaggerated understanding of what constituted impressive performance according to standards that separated authentic from manufactured demonstrations of dangerous skills. Van Cleef positioned himself at standard gunfighter distance while explaining measurement criteria that would determine whether demonstrated capability met professional rather than recreational standards for effectiveness that served practical rather than entertainment purposes, when such purposes required genuine rather than approximated understanding of what lethal skills actually demanded from practitioners. On my signal, draw and fire at center target. We'll measure time from signal to shot, then assess accuracy according to standards that determine whether speed without precision serves any practical purpose. In situations where both elements are necessary for effectiveness, that transcends impressive demonstration to reach genuine capability. McQueen adopted stance that reflected systematic rather than casual preparation, understanding that his performance would be measured against standards established by someone whose expertise was based on authentic rather than entertainment industry sources that might prioritize appearance over substance when those two requirements conflicted with each other during practical application under pressure. Ready, Van Cleef announced, his chronometer positioned to record precise timing that would eliminate subjective assessment in favor of objective measurement that could be verified and compared to established standards for professional rather than recreational demonstration of quick-draw capability that served genuine rather than performed purposes. The signal came without warning, testing whether McQueen's preparation had included psychological conditioning that maintained effectiveness when surprise eliminated opportunity for mental preparation that might be available during choreographed demonstrations conducted under controlled conditions that provided advance notice of timing requirements. McQueen's draw was lightning fast, his weapon appearing in firing position with mechanical precision that eliminated wasted motion while maintaining accuracy that proved his speed served practical rather than just impressive purposes when both elements were necessary for effectiveness that transcended entertainment to reach territory where genuine capability was measured through results rather than appearance. The shot echoed across the desert with authority that made both men understand they were witnessing demonstration of authentic rather than manufactured capability, followed by silence that carried weight of professional recognition that couldn't be purchased through publicity, or assumed through reputation that hadn't been tested according to practical rather than theoretical standards. 0.28 seconds. Van Cleef announced, his voice carrying surprise that mixed with professional respect for capability that exceeded his expectations about what Hollywood preparation could achieve when it was based on systematic learning from sources whose expertise was earned through authentic rather than entertainment industry experience. Center mass, perfect accuracy. That's professional gunfighter speed with precision that serves practical purposes, rather than just impressive demonstration that might look good without being effective in situations where both elements determine outcomes. The chronometer reading represented validation that McQueen's preparation had been based on genuine, rather than superficial understanding of what quick-draw capability actually required from practitioners whose expertise was tested under conditions that eliminated protective variables in favor of authentic measurement according to standards that couldn't be faked or approximated through theatrical preparation alone. Your turn. McQueen replied, understanding that fair assessment required reciprocal demonstration that would reveal whether Van Cleef's expertise was based on theoretical knowledge or practical experience with quick-draw techniques that served genuine rather than performed purposes when such purposes were tested by circumstances that demanded authentic rather than assumed capability. Van Cleef approached the firing position with confidence that reflected years of systematic training with sources whose expertise was based on documented, rather than theoretical understanding of what lethal capabilities actually required from people who claimed to possess them for reasons that transcended entertainment to reach practical application under circumstances that tested authentic versus manufactured competence. His stance revealed professional preparation that had been acquired through study with technical advisors whose knowledge was earned through military service, law enforcement experience, and historical research that connected modern instruction with authentic frontier practices that had been documented by people who'd witnessed rather than just performed dangerous skills during periods when such knowledge was necessity rather than recreational interest. "Ready when you are," McQueen announced, positioning the chronometer to record precise timing that would provide objective rather than subjective assessment of Van Cleef's claimed expertise according to standards that eliminated favoritism in favor of measurable demonstration that could be verified and compared to established benchmarks for professional capability. Van Cleef's draw was smooth and controlled, his weapon appearing with mechanical precision that demonstrated years of systematic practice designed to eliminate variables that might affect accuracy or timing, when both elements were necessary for effectiveness that served practical rather than dramatic purposes during situations that required genuine rather than performed demonstration of lethal skills. 0.31 seconds, perfect center mass. McQueen announced, his voice carrying professional respect for capability that proven Van Cleef's expertise was based on authentic rather than assumed understanding of what quick-draw techniques actually required when they were applied according to practical rather than theatrical standards that measured effectiveness through results. The measurement confirmed that both men possessed genuine rather than manufactured expertise with dangerous skills, but also established that McQueen's preparation had produced superior speed that couldn't be explained through entertainment industry instruction alone, suggesting his training had included sources whose knowledge was based on authentic rather than theoretical understanding of what practical applications actually demanded. Impressive, Van Cleef acknowledged, understanding that he'd encountered someone whose preparation exceeded his expectations about what Hollywood actors could achieve through systematic learning from sources whose expertise was based on genuine rather than entertainment industry understanding of what dangerous capabilities actually required from practitioners who claimed authentic rather than performed competence. "Where did you learn to draw that fast with accuracy that proves your speed serves practical rather than just impressive purposes?" "Same place I learned everything else that matters, from people who understood that some skills can't be taught in classrooms or studios, because they can only be developed through circumstances where inadequate preparation means consequences that formal instruction can't adequately prepare students to handle through theoretical knowledge that hasn't been tested by practical application." The response carried implications that Van Cleef understood, suggesting that McQueen's expertise was based on sources whose knowledge was earned through experiences that entertainment industry instruction couldn't adequately simulate through any preparation that didn't involve genuine risk and authentic learning that served practical rather than dramatic purposes when such purposes required genuine rather than assumed understanding of what dangerous skills actually demanded. "That explains why your technique exceeds what I expected from Hollywood preparation," Van Cleef replied, understanding that he'd encountered authentic rather than manufactured expertise that had been acquired through systematic learning from sources whose credibility was based on necessity rather than entertainment industry instruction that might prioritize appearance over substance when those requirements conflicted during practical application. As the Nevada sun climbed toward dangerous levels that would make extended outdoor activity inadvisable for anyone who valued comfort over educational opportunity, both men understood that their encounter had revealed important truths about authenticity, preparation, and the relationship between entertainment industry instruction and genuine knowledge that served practical rather than just dramatic purposes. "Steve," Van Cleef said as they prepared to conclude their informal testing session, "I owe you an acknowledgement. When I suggested your preparation might be limited to Hollywood instruction, I was making assumptions based on entertainment industry standards that don't adequately account for actors who seek authentic, rather than superficial understanding of the skills their roles require. And I learned something valuable about the difference between speed and wisdom. Your expertise represents systematic study with sources whose knowledge provides context that connects modern instruction with historical practices that can't be duplicated through entertainment industry preparation alone, no matter how dedicated that preparation might be. Both approaches serve different but complementary purposes for complete understanding of what dangerous skills represent to audiences who expect authentic rather than manufactured demonstrations that honor historical rather than just dramatic requirements. The Nevada desert returned to normal function as location where Western authenticity could be tested. Having witnessed rare encounter between different approaches to acquiring dangerous skills that had produced mutual respect through demonstration that genuine capability could be recognized regardless of its sources. Years later, when people discussed McQueen's Western roles, they would note that his quick-draw scenes carried authenticity that separated him from actors whose preparation was limited to choreography. Understanding that his credibility was based on genuine expertise earned through systematic study, with sources whose knowledge represented authentic understanding of dangerous skills. Subscribe for more untold stories of Hollywood's most authentic quick-draw confrontations between legends who proved their skills through demonstration rather than reputation.